Hi, let me show you how you can send feedback from EventGhost to iRule using the Dynamic Webserver plugin. I'll start over in the iRule builder by creating a device. I'll just call it test. Leave all the values at default and then create a couple of network codes on that device. First one I'll just call test1, and in the data field I enter the prefix UDP and test1, and then I add another one, calling it test2, and again the prefix UDP test2, like that. Then what I'll do is just add a couple of buttons on an empty page. Button 1 and button 2, and then tie those network codes to the buttons like so. And then I'll add a URL widget to the page as well. And this is where the feedback will be shown eventually. Call that one test as well. Make it a bit wider. And then in the address field, that's where you enter the IP address of the machine that you want to receive the feedback from. And then you add an HTML page that contains the feedback, like that. And I'll go ahead and save, and then we'll head over to the iPad for the configuration. Now on the iPad I have synced, and I'm selecting the test handset that I created for this. And then I have to add a new gateway, a network gateway for the EventGhost machine. Add new gateway. I'll connect it to the device that I created before, the test device. And then on the IP address, here's the trick. You don't enter the IP address of the machine, but just ending it with 255. And then select the port that I know is unused, 33339. I'll just give it a name as well. Test. And save. So let's check what the panel looks like. Just 2 buttons and a white space. Perfect. Now let's head over to EventGhost. I'm using the latest version from eventghost.net, starting with a fresh configuration file. First thing I want to do is add the broadcaster plugin so that I can receive UDP messages from iRule. The broadcaster is under the other section. There it is. Another configuration. I'll just change the event prefix to iRule, just to keep track where things are coming from, and then change the port to the one that I used in the iRule configuration, 33339, and I'll click the self-broadcast checkbox like so. Now let's see what happens when I hit the buttons on the iPad. Hitting button number 1 gives me an event, iRule UDP test 1, and similarly hitting button 2 gives me the second event. So now I can communicate from iRule to EventGhost and create the events. And so far so good. Then I need something to happen when those events occur. So let's create a folder here, calling it test, keeping consistent with the naming. In that folder I create 2 macros, which is a simple Python command in each. And the Python command is eg.globals.test equals test1. So what I'm doing is creating a variable called test in the eg-globals space, which is where you can create all variables that you want to be able to use in your EventGhost configuration tree. And I'm setting it to the value test1. And then I'll create a second one just like it. Actually, I can go ahead and copy that one. And just change it obviously to 2 instead. And just rename that as well for consistency. Like that. And then I'll drag those events over to the configuration tree so that the event 1 triggers macro number 1, event 2 triggers macro number 2. And let's save. Like that. So let's try again, hitting the buttons on the iPad. Number 1 triggers the event, which in turn triggers the macro number 1 and 2. So they both work. Excellent. So now I want to add the web servers that I can display my global variables on a web page. So let's add another plugin. And this one is called the Dynamic Webserver. It's also under the other section. There we go. And the only thing I need to configure here is the folder in which I keep my HTML files. And I have that in the program files, EventGhost directory called Webserver. I created that before I started recording. And that's all I need for that. Now, if you recall, in the URL widget, I specified a file called test.html, and this is what it looks like. I just created it using Notepad. Extremely simple file. This has a header, and then it has a piece of code that refreshes the page every 2 seconds, and then just some static text, and then in double curly brackets I have my test variable eg.globals.test. And again, this file is located in the folder that I specified in the web server configuration. So let's try it. I pointed an Internet Explorer to the IP address of the machine and the test HTML page. So now when I hit my 2 buttons on the iPad, I should hopefully see this changing. So test 2, and back to test 1. Test 2, test 1. So now what I want to do is make sure that that page is also displayed on the iPad in the iRule interface. So there you go. That was obviously just a quick proof of concept, but try this and hopefully you can be you'll be able to come up with a lot more sophisticated uses of this possibility. Obviously you can play around with the HTML file and change the background color and the font size, etc., so that it blends in nicely with your iRule interface. Good luck.